I'm very happy to have this opportunity to participate in a symposium dedicated to Nick Dunning's many contributions to understanding the Maya lowlands. This paper, in fact, at base is I wouldn't say continuation, but an outgrowth of a conversation that Nick and I had about 20 years ago, when I asked him how I was supposed to study the impact of the subterranean world on the Maya culture, and he told me I needed to study the structural geology of the Maya lowlands. So I've sort of had that in the back of my mind for a couple of decades, and this offers an opportunity to follow up on that. Also, this paper's concerned with an interesting thing that Claire Ebert has found, which is that there doesn't seem to be any particular cross-peninsular trend in the collapse of the classic period culture, but rather it's pocketed in clusters, which reminds me of something that Willie Folden and I published about 20 years ago, which is that similarly the watersheds of the peninsula have no trend when you determine what forces in the global climate are having on them. For instance, in the Champatone River watershed, the impacts are primarily local anthropogenic impacts like deforestation. But if you go to the Candelaria River system, it's influenced by solar activity, variations in solar activity, and the very highly terrain diverse Usumacinta drainage is influenced by global warming. So what is one to do? Well, one needs to turn to multiple regression, which allows you to look at these things in terms of more than one variable, and so these are the betas on multiple regression for these drainages, and here you can see the high beta on anthropogenic things in the Champatone, and high solar activity beta in the Candelaria, and the influence of global change on the Usumacinta. So, what kind of variables are we going to look at in terms of how to understand the culture change in the Maya lowlands, specifically the change from the classic to the post-classic, with a brief intervening transitional classic. And this brings us back to the concern for subterranean things, which I think maybe it was quite extensive. Here you have a photograph of Gene Perry's, and what's going on with the high karst, I'm calling it, the karst north of the El Laborito Bajo, you can see this huge amount of gypsum available that the commercial enterprises are mining, and this I think must be the bedded gypsum that was deposited in the Mesozoic. And then you have the Chicxulub, probably the Chicxulub debris that came crashing down after this looks like your typical KT boundary sort of thing, a burning, not surprising, and then a lot of rubble, and that rubble is most highly visible along the in the area north of Calakmul. This is where that photograph was taken, in this little square. And then you have several other instances around here, places where the gypsum is being mined commercially. That's north of the Labyrinto Bajo and north of Calakmul. And we'll have a look at Choctoon here, which Ivan Spatzik has recently studied and found to be occupied in a very restricted period of time in terms of what I'm calling hyper-urbanism here, which is the just urbanism that has gone beyond the local carrying capacity. And we have other information to add to this, such as in the late Antique Little Ice Age book that we've been working on. Nuria Torres-Ganovaya has studied the lake geophysical characteristics of lake sediments in the at the bottom of the west-facing syncline of the Petén Campechano, and that tune that Ivan gathered. You can see that there's almost no particular amount of occupation, and in the Lake Classic, the population indicator sure jumps by a factor of 10 from the early Classic, and then drops back precipitously in the terminal Classic. So we have that subsurface control on the hyperurbanism clearly going on there. So we have those two variables, the hyperurban revolution going on, which is controlled by the subterranean stuff. Then you have also Claire's quantifiable variable in terms of these clusters of collapsing cities, and I'm giving those kind of strong probabilities, about 80%, because of this already quantified perspective on them. Then to add some more variables to the conversation, I'm interested in Simon Martin's idea that there might have been some kind of a institutional decision made in around 810 CE to abandon the interior cities project, and I suppose the elites moved on to greener grass, greener pastures in the coastal plains and coastal cities. And so those things, that along with a prevailing winds hypothesis, which is an alternative to how the climate is working, I'm giving those 70% probability because of they're both quantifiable in various reasons. And something that just kind of occurred to me while I was working on this, that there might have been a reduction in military reach in the late Classic because of the fragmentation and the collapsing of alliances between cities. But the quantification of that will appear in the future, I presume, and so it has kind of a low possibility of contributing to the post-classic conditions that we're anticipating seeing. Now, the way that you can systematize the conversation over these variables is as in the watershed analysis I mentioned earlier, is to run these probabilities that you've assigned through a Bayesian analysis, which gives some sense of what how they act in combination, and they suggest that the late Classic culture was ready for a transition to a new economy and a new system of governance, and at nearly 100% of perspective. And breaking that down, you find that there's almost no sympathy in this set of variables for continued stable terrestrial cities. About 1 chance in 10 that they could have pulled that off. Fragmented order is 20%, 21%, and I think that might kind of represent the transitional transitional period, at the end of the Classic, but before the post-Classic. But the sympathy for a new economic organization based on maritime transportation, energy efficiency, and so on is strong, almost 70%. So what this represents is a second pass through this information. The first pass, I just kind of took some probabilities off the top of my head, and after thinking about it for a few weeks, I decided really I needed to adjust it, and so I made a second pass, and that's what gives you the current figures that that are here. And the way the Bayesian inference works, well, you just need to have yourself or other people readjust the variables and the probabilities and run them to a new analysis and figure out what the likelihoods that they offer to the solution of moving from a late Classic to a post-Classic configuration. So thank you for your attention. I look forward to discussing this conversation in following conversations.